Éamon de Valera was one of the dominant political figures in 20th century Ireland. His political career spanned over half a century. From 1917 to 1973, he served several terms as head of government and head of state. He also led the introduction of the Constitution of Ireland. De Valera was a leader in the War of Independence and of the anti-treaty opposition in the ensuing Irish Civil War. After leaving Sinn Féin in 1926 due to its policy of abstentionism, he founded Fianna Fáil, and was head of government from 1932 to 1948. 1951 to 1954, and 1957 to 1959, when he resigned after being elected as President of Ireland. His political creed evolved from militant republicanism to social and cultural conservatism. Assessments of de Valera's career have varied. He has often been characterized as a stern, unbending, devious, and divisive Irish politician. Biographer Tim Coogan sees his time in power as being characterized by economic and cultural stagnation, while Diarmaid Ferreira argues that the stereotype of de Valera as an austere, cold and even backward figure was largely manufactured in the 1960s and is misguided. Early life. De Valera was born in New York City in 1882 to an Irish mother. His parents, Catherine Coll and Juan Vivian de Valera, were reportedly married on 18 September 1881 at St. Patrick's Church in Jersey City, New Jersey. However, archivists have not located any such marriage certificate or any birth, baptismal, or death certificate information for anyone called Juan Vivian de Valera. On de Valera's original birth certificate, his name is given as George de Valero and his father is listed as Vivian de Valero. The first name was changed in 1910 to Edward and the surname corrected to de Valera. Better source needed. According to Coll, Juan Vivian died in 1885, leaving Coll and her child in poor circumstances. Éamon was taken to Ireland by his uncle Ned at the age of 2. Even when his mother married a new husband in the mid-1880s, he was not brought back to live with her, but was reared instead by his grandmother, Elizabeth Coll, her son Patrick and her daughter Hanny, in County Limerick. He was educated locally at Brewery National School, County Limerick and CBS, Charleville, County Cork. Aged 16, he won a scholarship. He played rugby there, and later, during his tenure at Rockwell College, he joined the school's rugby team where he played fullback on the first team, which reached the final of the Munster Senior Cup. De Valera went on to play for the Munster rugby team around 1905 in the fullback position and remained a lifelong devotee of rugby, attending numerous international matches up to and towards the end of his life despite near blindness. He told the British ambassador in 1967, "For my part, one have always preferred rugby, always a diligent student." At the end of his first year in Blackrock College he was Student of the Year. He also won further scholarships and exhibitions and in 1903 was appointed teacher of mathematics at Rockwell College, County Tipperary. It was here that de Valera was first given the nickname Dev by a teaching colleague, Tom O'Donnell. In 1904, he graduated in mathematics from the Royal University of Ireland. He then studied for a year at Trinity College Dublin but, owing to the necessity of earning a living, did not proceed further and returned to teaching, this time at Belvedere College. In 1906, he secured a post as teacher of mathematics at Carey's Fork Teachers Training College for Women in Blackrock, County Dublin. His applications for professorships in colleges of the National University of Ireland were unsuccessful, but he obtained a part-time appointment at Maynooth and also taught mathematics at various Dublin schools, including Castleknock College and Belvedere College. There were occasions when de Valera seriously contemplated the religious life like his half-brother, Fr. Thomas Wheelwright, but ultimately he did not pursue this vocation. As late as 1906, when he was 24 years old, he approached the president of Clonliffe Seminary in Dublin for advice on his vocation. De Valera was throughout his life portrayed as a deeply religious man, who in death asked to be buried in a religious habit. His biographer, Tim Pat Coogan, speculated that questions surrounding de Valera's legitimacy may have been a deciding factor in his not entering religious life. However, being illegitimate would have been a bar to receiving orders only as a secular or diocesan cleric, not as a member of a religious order. As a young Gaelchois, de Valera became an activist for the language. In 1908 he joined the Ardref of Conrad na Gaeilge, where he met Sinead Flanagan, a teacher by profession and 4 years his senior. They were married on 8 January 1910 at St Paul's Church, Aaron-Key, Dublin. De Valera's children were 5 sons, Vivian, Éamon, Brian, Ruaira, and Terence, and 2 daughters, Myrene and Emma. Brian de Valera predeceased his parents' early political activity. While he was already involved in the Gaelic revival, de Valera's involvement in the political revolution began on 25 November 1913 when he joined the Irish Volunteers formed to oppose the Ulster Volunteers and ensure the enactment of the Irish Parliamentary Party's Third Home Rule Act won by its leader John Redmond. After the outbreak of World War I in August 1914, de Valera rose through the ranks and it was not long before he was elected captain of the Donnybrook Company. Preparations were pushed ahead for an armed revolt, and he was made commandant of the 3rd Battalion and adjutant of the Dublin Brigade. He took part in the Howth gun running. He opposed secret societies, but this was the only way he could be guaranteed full information on plans for the Rising. Easter Rising. On 24 April 1916 the Easter Rising began. Forces commanded by de Valera occupied Boland's Mill on Grand Canal Street in Dublin. His chief task was to cover the southeastern approaches to the city. After a week of fighting, the order came from Patrick Pearse to surrender. De Valera was court-martialed, convicted, and sentenced to death, but the sentence was immediately commuted to penal servitude for life. De Valera was the only commandant of the rebellion who was not executed. It has been argued that his life was saved by 4 facts. First, he was one of the last to surrender and he was held in a different prison from other leaders. Thus his execution was delayed by practicalities. Second, the U.S. consulate in Dublin made representations before his trial while the full legal situation was clarified. The UK was trying to bring the US into the war in Europe at the time. This made the situation even more uncertain, though this did not prevent the execution of Tom Clark, who had been an American citizen since 1905. Third, when LT Gen. John Maxwell reviewed his case, he said, "Who is he? I haven't heard of him before. I wonder would he be likely to make trouble in the future." On being told that de Valera was unimportant, he commuted the court-martial's death sentence to life imprisonment. De Valera had no Fenian family or personal background, and his MI5 file in 1916 was very slim, only detailing his open membership in the Irish Volunteers. Fourth, by the time de Valera was court-martialed on 8 May, political pressure was being brought to bear on Maxwell to halt the executions. Maxwell had already told the Prime Minister his late trial, representations made by the American consulate, his lack of Fenian background and political pressure all combined to save his life. Though had he been tried a week earlier he would probably have been shot. De Valera supporters and detractors argue about de Valera's bravery during the Easter Rising. His supporters claim he showed leadership skills and a meticulous ability for planning. His detractors claim he suffered a nervous breakdown during the Rising. According to accounts from 1916, de Valera was seen running about, giving conflicting orders, refusing to sleep, and on one occasion, having forgotten the password, almost getting himself shot in the dark by his own men. According to one account, de Valera, on being forced to sleep by one subordinate who promised to sit beside him and wake him if he was needed, suddenly woke up, his eyes wild, screaming, set fire to the railway set fire to the railway. Later in the Ballykinler internment camp, one de Valera loyalist approached another internee, a medical doctor, recounted the story, and asked for a medical opinion as to de Valera's condition. He also threatened to sue the doctor, future Fine Gael teacher Tavdala and minister, Dr. Tom O'Higgins, if he ever repeated the story. The British reportedly, however, considered de Valera's forces the best trained and best led among the rebels. De Valera's latest biographer, Anthony J. Jordan, writes of this controversy: "Whatever happened in Boland Mills, or any other garrison, does not negate or undermine in any way the extraordinary heroism of Dev and his comrades." After imprisonment in Dartmoor, Maidstone, and Louis prisons, de Valera and his comrades were released under an amnesty in June 1917. On 10 July 1917 he was elected member of the House of Commons for East Clare in a by-election caused by the death of the previous incumbent Willie Redmond, brother of the Irish Party leader John Redmond, who had died fighting in World War I. In the 1918 general election, he was elected both for that seat and Mayo East. Because most other Irish rebellion leaders were dead, in 1917 he was elected president of Sinn Féin, the party which had been blamed incorrectly for provoking the Easter Rising. This party became the political vehicle through which the survivors of the Easter Rising channeled their Republican ethos and objectives. The previous president of Sinn Féin, Arthur Griffith, had championed an Anglo-Irish dual monarchy, based on the Austro-Hungarian model, with independent legislatures for both Ireland and Britain. This solution would, mutatis mutandis, emulate the situation following the Constitution of 1782 under Henry Grattan, until Ireland was legislatively subsumed into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland in 1801. President of dɛvəʻlɛrə, Sinn Féin won a huge majority in the 1918 general election, largely thanks to the British executions of the 1916 leaders, the threat of conscription with the conscription crisis of 1918 and the first-past-the-post ballot. They won 73 out of 105 Irish seats, with about 47% of votes cast. 25 seats were uncontested. On 21 January 1919, 27 Sinn Féin MPs, calling themselves Teach Tadala, assembled in the Mansion House in Dublin and formed an Irish Parliament, known as dɛvəʻlɛrə. A ministry or éireacht was formed, under the leadership of the Prior Mayor Cathal Brugha. De Valera had been rearrested in May 1918 and imprisoned, and so could not attend the January session of the Dáil. He escaped from Lincoln Jail, England in February 1919. As a result, he replaced Brugha as Prior Mayor in the April session of dɛvəʻlɛrə. In the hope of securing international recognition, Sean T. O'Kelly was sent as envoy to Paris to present the Irish case to the peace conference convened by the great powers at the end of World War I. When it became clear by May 1919 that this mission could not succeed, de Valera decided to visit the United States. The mission had three objectives: to ask for official recognition of the Irish Republic, to float a loan to finance the work of the government, and to secure the support of the American people for the Republic. His visit lasted from June 1919 to December 1920 and had mixed success. One negative outcome was the splitting of the Irish-American organizations into pro- and anti-de Valera factions. He met the young Harvard-educated leader from Puerto Rico, Pedro Albizu Campos, and forged a lasting and useful alliance with him. De Valera managed to raise $5,500,000 from American supporters, an amount that far exceeded the hopes of the Dáil. Of this, $500,000 was devoted to the American presidential campaign in 1920, which helped him gain wider public support there. In 1921 it was said that $1,466,000 had already been spent, and it is unclear when the net balance arrived in Ireland. Recognition was not forthcoming in the international sphere. He also had difficulties with various Irish-American leaders, such as John de Valero and Judge Daniel F. Carlin, who resented the dominant position he established, preferring to retain their control over Irish affairs in the United States. Meanwhile in Ireland, conflict between the British authorities and the Dáil escalated into the Irish War of Independence. De Valera left day-to-day government, during his 18-month absence in America, to Michael Collins, his 29-year-old Minister for Finance. De Valera and Collins would later become opponents during the Irish Civil War. President of the Republic. In January 1921, at his first Dáil meeting after his return to a country gripped by the War of Independence, de Valera introduced a motion calling on the IRA to desist from ambushes and other tactics that were allowing the British to successfully portray it as a terrorist group, and to take on the British forces with conventional military methods. This they strongly opposed, and de Valera relented, issuing a statement expressing support for the IRA, and claimed it was fully under the control of the Dáil. He then, along with Cathal Brugha and Austin Stack, brought pressure to bear on Michael Collins to undertake a journey to the U.S. himself, on the pretext that only he could take up where de Valera had left off. Collins successfully resisted this move, and stayed in Ireland. In the elections of May 1921, all candidates in Southern Ireland were returned unopposed, and Sinn Féin secured some seats in Northern Ireland. Following the truce of July 1921 that ended the war, de Valera went to see David Lloyd George in London on the 14th of July. No agreement was reached, and by then the Parliament of Northern Ireland had already met. It became clear that neither a republic nor independence for all 32 counties were going to be offered. Lloyd George told de Valera he could put a soldier in Ireland for every man, woman and child in it, if the IRA did not immediately agree to stop fighting. In August 1921, de Valera secured Dáil approval to change the 1919 Dáil Constitution to upgrade his office from Prime Minister or Chairman of the Cabinet to a full President of the Republic. Declaring himself now the Irish equivalent of King George V, he argued that as Irish head of state, in the absence of the British head of state from the negotiations, he too should not attend the peace conference called the Treaty Negotiations, at which British and Irish government leaders agreed to the effective independence of 26 of Ireland's 32 counties as the Irish Free State, with Northern Ireland choosing to remain under British sovereignty. It is generally agreed by historians that whatever his motives, it was a mistake for de Valera not to have travelled to London. Having done so, a boundary commission came into place to redraw the Irish border. Nationalists expected its report to recommend that largely nationalist areas become part of the Free State, and many hoped this would make Northern Ireland so small it would not be economically viable. A Council of Ireland was also provided in the treaty as a model for an eventual all-Irish parliament. Hence neither the pro nor anti-treaty sides made much complaint about partition in the treaty debates.